There are thoughts you think every single day, and you don't even notice you're thinking them. Will I make rent this month? Can I afford to get sick? What happens if I lose this job? These thoughts don't feel like fear. They feel like background noise, like a hum you've lived with so long you think it's normal. But there are three specific numbers in your net worth after which that hum goes silent.
And the world around you stays exactly the same. But you don't. When people talk about wealth, they throw out numbers. 1 million, 10 million, enough to never work again. But that's the wrong question. The right question isn't how much money do I have? The right question is, what have I stopped thinking about?
Because each level of net worth doesn't add possibilities to your life. It subtracts one specific fear. And that subtraction changes everything. How you sleep, how you make decisions, who you listen to, what irritates you. Today, we're going to break down 3 of those levels. Not 3 account balances. 3 moments where your brain literally switches into a different operating mode. And if you're not there yet, you need to understand exactly what's keeping you stuck. Level 1 is not $1 million. Level 1 is 3 months. 3 months of expenses sitting completely untouched, somewhere separate from your main financial life. For most Americans, that number lands somewhere between $10,000 and $25,000, depending on where you live and how. But the number isn't the point.
The point is what happens inside your brain when that number exists. Neuroscientists call it reduced cognitive load from scarcity. In plain English, when you know you have a cushion, your brain stops running the math every hour of every day. A Princeton study showed that financial stress reduces a person's functional IQ by roughly 13 points. That's not a metaphor. That's literal cognitive capacity, bleeding into anxiety instead of thinking. Below level 1, you don't make decisions. You react. Every unexpected bill, every car repair, every medical question, your entire brain hijacks into survival mode. Above level 1, for the first time in your life, you start thinking forward instead of downward. Not because you got richer, because you stopped being afraid of next week. Here's what nobody tells you about level 1. Most people never reach it, not because they don't earn enough money, but because the system is designed so that money never sits still. Credit cards, buy now, pay later, subscriptions, upgrades, lifestyle inflation. The entire consumer economy runs on one principle. Every time you get $500 ahead, something is already engineered to take it. And this isn't a character flaw. This is architecture. Marketers, algorithms, push notifications, all of it is built to keep money flowing away from you, not toward you. The people who reach level 1 don't out-earn everyone else. They do one specific thing. They create friction between their money and the ability to spend it. They make the buffer inconvenient to access. Separate bank, different institution, automatic transfer before the paycheck ever hits the main account. Because if money is visible, it will be spent. That's not a theory. That's behavioral design working against you. Level 2 is when you can say no and nothing falls apart. Not, no, I can't afford it. Just no, as a complete sentence. No explanation, no back-of-envelope math, no fear underneath it. This threshold sits differently for everyone, but most financial analysts put it somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000 in liquid or semi-liquid assets. Why does this specific range change how life feels? Because below this level, every yes in your life is driven by necessity. You take that job because you need the money. You stay in that relationship because you can't afford the apartment on your own. You keep quiet in that meeting because you can't risk the position.
This isn't a metaphor about power. This is the literal economics of your decisions. Level 2 doesn't buy you freedom. It buys you a pause, a gap between the impulse and the action, between the fear and the choice. That pause is exactly where wealthy people make decisions that make them wealthier. Decisions made under pressure are survival decisions. Decisions made from choice are wealth decisions. And the difference between them isn't intelligence.
It's whether or not that pause exists. But level 2 carries a trap that almost no one sees coming. When real choice arrives, real fear of losing it arrives with it. Before this point, you were afraid of being broke. Now you start being afraid of falling back. And that's exactly where most people stop. They reach the level where they can say no. And then they start saying no to too many things. No to opportunity, too risky. No to investing. What if I lose it? No to change. I finally have stability.
Psychologists call this loss aversion at the threshold. Losses at the point of having something hurt far more than losses at zero. Because now you have something to lose. Level 2 isn't the finish line. It's the first real test. Because here is where it's decided.
Are you someone who accumulated or someone who's still moving? Level 3 is the hardest thing in this video to hear because level 3 isn't a number. It's the moment money stops being the goal. Most people imagine this as beaches, early retirement, endless vacation. That's not what it is. Financial psychologists who study people who've crossed the $1 to $3 million threshold consistently report the same thing. The first thing that changes is not your lifestyle. The first thing that changes is your relationship with time. Below this level, time always costs money. Every hour has a price. Every week is a calculation. Above this level, you start measuring money in time. Not how much does this cost, but how many hours of my life is this worth? That is a 180-degree reversal in how you perceive the most fundamental resource you have.
And something else comes with it. Calling someone a friend gets simpler because you know they're not there for what you can give them that you haven't chosen to give. Making decisions gets quieter because fear is no longer standing behind every one of them. Telling the truth gets cheaper because you don't have to sell yourself to survive. Level 3 doesn't give you happiness.
It removes the noise that was drowning it out. Now, the specifics. Because without numbers, this stays philosophy. Level 1, 3 months of expenses, sitting completely separate from your daily financial life. If your monthly expenses are $3,000, that's $9,000. If they're $5,000, that's $15,000.
This is not an investment, not a retirement account. It's a buffer, boring, untouched, and the most important money you will ever build. Level 2, $100,000 to $300,000 in liquid or semi-liquid assets. For most people, that takes between 7 and 15 years, if you start with intention. That number looks impossible if you stare at it whole. It looks achievable when you break it into $500 a month over a decade with modest returns. Level 3, $1 million to $3 million, depending on your lifestyle and where you live. At a 4 to 5% annual return, that's $40,000 to $150,000 per year without ever touching the principal. That's not a guarantee of happiness. That's a guarantee of quiet.
And in that quiet, you hear yourself think for the first time. But here's what most people get completely wrong. They try to skip. They dismiss level 1 because it feels too small. They dream directly about level 3 because it feels like real freedom. And that's exactly why most people never reach any of them. Because these levels function like psychological operating systems. You cannot run level 3 without level 2 installed. You cannot run level 2 stably without level 1 underneath it.
Each level isn't a balance in an account. It's a set of instincts, habits, and responses that only develop inside that level. Lottery winners who skip all 3 levels lose everything, on average, within 3 to 5 years. Not because they're stupid, because their minds have no operating system for managing what they suddenly hold. Money without the psychology of the level is like a server with no operating system. The hardware is there, but nothing runs. So the path doesn't start with a target number.
It starts with one honest question. Which level is my mind actually running on right now? There's a question people ask wrong their entire lives. How do I earn enough? The right question sounds different. What exactly will I stop thinking about when I reach each level? Because financial freedom is not something you acquire. It's something you shed. At level 1, you shed the tyranny of next month. At level 2, you shed the compulsion to agree out of fear. At level 3, you shed the noise that spent your whole life drowning out your own voice. And here's the last thing to understand. Every person watching this is already on one of these 3 levels, whether they know it or not. Some of you don't have the buffer yet, and every decision you make is heavier than it needs to be. The path is simple, not easy. Make the buffer untouchable before you do anything else. Some of you have the buffer, but you're paralyzed at the edge of level 2. The fear of losing what you have is louder than the pull of what's possible. That's not caution, that's the trap. Some of you are closer to level 3 than you think, and the only thing between you and the silence is a number you keep moving further away because you don't believe you deserve it yet. The levels don't care about deserve. They only respond to sequence. Most financial content ends with a number. Save this much. Invest here. Retire at this age. This doesn't end that way, because the point was never the number. The point is what the number does to your nervous system. The point is which thoughts you carry to bed every night, and which ones you finally put down. The buffer gives you your brain back. The pause gives you your decisions back. The silence gives you yourself back. Most people spend 40 years chasing a number without ever understanding what the number was actually supposed to subtract from their life. Now you understand it. Which means the question isn't whether you can reach these levels. The question is, what are you still carrying that you were never supposed to carry this long? That's the only number that matters right now.